Hello, everybody. I hope you're all surviving and thriving in today's world. Should you just say something? Let me tell you what the world is challenging for a lot of for a lot of people. It's challenging on basically every place in the world now, and of course, it always has been. In fact, that's the life of a human being. Human beings, we we live challenging lives, and what's kind of interesting is that our lives are challenging, even if they don't have to be. Every once in a while, I see, I'm watching like a biography or an autobiography that's sort of the focus is like a movie star or a billionaire. And you could tell just by watching the interview that there are challenges. It's just a different set of challenges. Billionaires have a different set of challenges than people that don't have $1 billion. But it doesn't mean that there are no challenges. And in a way, we sort of fall into whatever challenge life brings to us. The specific challenges, our specific circumstances differ, but we're all challenged in a certain way. And that's just true for the human family. And here's the thing: even when things get significantly better, like my life in the modern age, right? It's 2024, right? It is definitely beyond the year 2000, and the many hundreds, maybe beyond the industrial revolution, beyond the age of enlightenment. And things are amazing now. I mean, they're amazing, and they're still challenging. Of course, we just have different challenges now. Things are quite a lot better than they were. Back then we had like child labor, and we had things like slavery going on. Of course, today we've got variants of those, and arguably less bad, less less bad, but we're still significantly challenged. Human beings have a way of making we make our lives harder than they have to be. I seem to remember futurists talking in like the 1950s saying that, well, once labor saving devices get pervasive in society, then people are not gonna need to work as much. They're gonna be able to work less, and they'll be able to have more leisure. Let me ask you, compared to the 1950s, do you think you have more leisure? Do you think you have less stress compared to the 1950s? I would be hard pressed to say that we are less stressed. I would be hard pressed. Our lives are just very different. We we are focused on a whole bunch of different things, but I don't know if that means that our stress level is any lower. In fact, I don't know. I would argue it's higher. Now, here's the thing: it doesn't have to be. I mean, if you think about it really deeply, I mean, a lot of people do have running water, and the homes today are like three times the size of the homes that were in the 1950s, were popular in the 1950s. I don't know if that's entirely true, but there are definitely aspects of our lives today that are much easier. Um, uh, Also, it's because of the advent of new technology and new discoveries, new cultural understandings. And we have a lot more freedom in certain respects today than we did back then. Although, one could argue there are certain kinds of freedom we had back then that we certainly don't have today. I don't know. It's really tough to make a choice about, I don't know. What's nice too is that some of the rigidity of culture has gotten a little more lax, I suppose, been a little more supple. But I don't know about that. It's really tough to make a call. I mean, I wasn't alive during the 1950s, and I don't know. it's kind of funny. We do have a lot of modern day conveniences, a lot of modern technologies. I mean, look at AI, artificial intelligence. That's amazing. I mean, mental work, theoretically, anyone who has access to a computer can get a free account to have an AI agent do some amount of work that they would have had to do by themselves in the 1950s. There was also like there's so much more information than there was in the 1950s. If you want to do a research paper that's 50 pages long, well, with a laptop computer, the internet, or your cell phone, you can pound out a 50-page long report on basically any subject you want because you have the ability to research the internet and get inputs from AI and everything like that. There's basically no limits to the amount that you could learn if you wanted to learn, right? If you were motivated to learn, you could totally learn about anything under the sun, and reach a level after a period of years that would certainly rival any expert in the field, right? If you chose to, if you were sufficiently motivated. And that's true for almost any subject today. And that wasn't true in the 1950s. There was a lot of information that was just not known. People would, in order to learn things, you'd have to either find that information in the newspaper, in magazines, or you'd have to go to the library. And you'd have to use the Dewey Decimal System to sort of access that information. And you'd have to sort of, it would be hard to sort of learn a lot of, I don't know, very, very detailed, precise information that we kind of take for granted today. I mean, I could just call out and ask Google Home, what's the distance between the Earth and the Sun, and it will spit out an amazingly good number. And I don't know, we really do live in an amazing time, and yet we also are stressed and work hard, and it's pretty funny how human beings are like that. We are so much better than our ancestors were who lived in prehistory times, and I'm talking about 35,000 BC, right? I'm talking about folks who lived during the Paleolithic era. I mean, a long time ago, before written history. And back then there wasn't antibiotics, and in fact, we weren't necessarily the dominant species on the planet. There were lions and bears and other wild animals that basically were the top of the pyramid in the ecological system. And we held our own definitely for thousands and thousands of years, which is great. With I'm sure a lot of self-sacrifice, and somehow we did it. We're so much better today than we were 35,000 years ago. And I think a lot of people might long for that time in the past, although they would probably long out of ignorance, because imagine just dying from a scratch, or maybe eating a food that is not well known, and then like a mushroom or something, and poisoning yourself. I don't know. Those lives were pretty short and very difficult. I mean, today, we've got shoes under our feet, whereas in the past, if you could find a hide, from a local animal, like a beaver or a cow or some other kind of animal, and you would have to make your shoes. And before you even started to get to the making of the shoes, you'd need to get like some obsidian, find some obsidian, so you could sort of pound that obsidian into some kind of spearhead. It was challenging back then. And if you wanted food, well, golly, there's a tree, some random tree, and you'd pick like berries off of it, or I'm sure that not even berries, but you'd pick like seeds off of it. And I don't know, you'd see like plants on the ground, and you wouldn't really have much of a choice but to eat whatever plants you could scavenge. especially if you were really hungry. And so, I mean, it's not like you're going to be able to cook it. Uh, I'm sure. I'm yes, I believe that fire was discovered about 1 million years ago, and so yes, 35,000 years ago, indeed, our ancestors probably had fire, and so that was a luxury back then to have fire. And the thing about it, fire only works if it's dry. If it's wet out, fire goes away. And so, today I think we definitely have it better, but there's still challenges that linger. And in many respects, we make our lives a lot harder than they could be. Now, that said, I want to mention that in the uh, sort of the context of my lifespan, I'm definitely getting better at the life problems. A lot of getting better at life's problems is sort of anticipating what could go wrong and then making some course corrections, or making sort of hedging your bets, sort of basically making sure that you've got enough insurance, enough safety factor as you're moving through your life to not fall off a cliff somewhere, or inadvertently injure someone or something like that. And after many years, you end up getting a sense of sort of the pattern, right? There are patterns that show up after 5, 10, 20 years, and you develop skills at life, just life skills, just recognizing, like, oh, there's a staircase, I better slow down as I walk down the staircase, and I walk down that staircase with care, because I've fallen down staircases before and have had untoward results where my knee has, like, I banged up my knee one time. I fell down the stairs one time. I was rushing, going too fast down it. And I was sort of hurrying down the stairs, and I tripped, fell slightly a few steps down the stairs on my hands and knees, and messed up my knee a little bit. And it stayed messed up for years. And let me tell you, I was really challenged to run. I was heck challenged to walk after that, and I thought that there were some serious problems with my knee. Went to an orthopedic surgeon to go check it out. I never did surgery or anything like that, but eventually, after a period of 4 or 5 years, eventually all the things got worked out, and I was able to run again, thankfully. And now I run quite regularly, at least once or twice a week. And I'm so thankful for the ability to run. And I also remember to watch myself going downstairs. It's a big deal. If I lost almost like 4 or 5 years of mobility because I was sort of hustling down a staircase, and I'm just not going to do that anymore. I know the consequences of running downstairs. That is just something I'm not going to do. And I'm grateful for that information. As an older guy, I know what not to do. In fact, yeah, as an older person, after hurting myself enough times, I know what not to do. Now, here's the thing, which is kind of funny. Sometimes I got to these patterns over and over again. I don't necessarily learn my lesson every time. And I need to be reminded periodically, because I forget, like any normal person. And, being able to recall every event that was untoward over the last, 50 or so years, um, that's just not possible. So it's true. I've got to relearn problems, but I develop like rules of thumb over time, and I get better. And I'm grateful for that. And hopefully there's also another aspect of it. I'm also quite lucky. I'm kind of a lucky person, and that, for some reason, I have not really had like absolute challenges like there are some. Now that's not to say that it's impossible to come back from absolute challenges, but it is, thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't had like too many terrible challenges. People get like genetic disorders or they have problems with their immune system. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen. Any kind of accident that sort of plays havoc on a person's joints or metabolic systems. I don't know what it could be, but it doesn't take much really. And in fact, here's the thing: life is extremely delicate. It doesn't take more than say a few grams of mercury or a few grams of lead to really mess things up. It doesn't take more than like a laser in the wrong to impact your eyeball in the wrong place for you'd have some lasting disability. And there are lasers all around us. You go to the grocery store, just probably going through the checkout section, you probably encounter 3 or 4 lasers. And I don't know, there's just some continuous problems. I mean, walking outside, a lot of people, they walk outside 15 minutes later, particularly if it's in the middle of the day, then they've got a sunburn. It doesn't take much, 15 or 20 minutes, an instant of sort of sloppy thinking, miscoordination. I mean, if you think about it, people drive 60, 70 miles an hour on the roads. Like, how long really does it take in terms of a lapse of attention or a lapse of coordination for someone to fly off the road? It's not really hard. I mean, it doesn't take any more than a second or two. And, the fact that I'm still here is just a testament to good fortune. That's what I say. And I sometimes I can't believe it myself because the world is a very risky place to live, and it doesn't even have to be my fault, so to speak. It could be. I mean, there could be any number of lapses in attention, even on the road. I mean, on the road, I'm somewhat confident in my own abilities, right? My own levels of coordination and attention, but I have no idea what stranger's behind the wheel who's going 60 or 70 miles an hour adjacent to me. I have no idea who they are, what their history is, whether they have seizures or diabetes or occasional strokes. I don't know what's going on with them. And somehow they've managed not to run into me. So, wow. Now, that's not, I've actually had a few bumps where people have run into me. But thankfully, it didn't give me any kind of traumatic brain injury or anything like that. I've thankfully, knock on wood again, I've been lucky enough not to have that kind of problem. But I admit it is just luck. I'm just happen to be in the right place in the right time. Now, I also know that my luck is going to run out one of these days. There's no one on the planet who's 200 years old. There's no one on the planet that's 150 years old. I know that. And so I know my time is coming. And I know there's going to be a few strokes of bad luck because I've got imperfect genes. My longevity, my lifespan is limited. And as I become less coordinated and less thoughtful because of my brain neurons degrading over time, it's going to just get easier and easier. For some stray thought or lesson to have been forgotten, and I could be down for the count real easy. Now, I'm hopeful that in the future we'll have like robots and AI take over. Just as I'm in mental and physical decline, hopefully we'll have robots taking over. So, and then eventually, they're going to come up with a technology where, as a brain in a vat, all they'll have to do is extract the brain from my skull, and then I can live forever inside of a vat. Just put the electrodes around the cerebral cortex, and I'm good to go. And I can imagine, like um, audio, video, what do they call it? Virtual reality type situation going on. That would be amazing. We'll see. We'll see how it all works out. See if we can plug in to the internet one of these days. All I'll have to do is use a USB cable and stick it somewhere in my ear, and I'll be connected to the hive mind, and I'll live forever, right? I don't know how that's gonna go. We'll have to figure it out once. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just thankful that I'm still here. When I was young, and this is an interesting fact. When I was young, I thought I will have passed away by age 16. I mean, I really wasn't that confident that I was going to be able to make it out. Just because I recognized just how challenging living was. I mean, it's a lot of years. 16 is a lot of years old, and there's so many things that could go wrong. I mean, even when you're sort of on a school bus going to or from school, at any time, someone could run into the school bus, or there could be an accident of some kind. I could be riding on my bike and hit some traffic, or traffic can hit me. It really doesn't take much, but somehow, I mean, I still remember thinking, man, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it past 16. But somehow I did, and I'm definitely thankful. And honestly, I'm still surprised. It's a funny psychological trait where I'm like, wow, I can't believe I made it as far as I did. And what's great too is, I feel just as young inside as I look outside. No, no, I can definitely see the age creep up on me. Every once in a while I look at my skin, particularly the back of my hand, and I'm going, oh man, these are old man hands. Let me see. And because that's kind of interesting how you can notice like the changes in collagen. He's noticed the elasticity of the skin changing, and that wrinkles are just showing up where you didn't have wrinkles before. I mean, it's great to some extent, but to another extent, it's kind of an irreversible process. Now, I am aware that there are treatments out there, and at present, I'm not interested in any of them. I think there is something beautiful about a natural face. It's just me, and I know that there are a lot of folks who are very Botox friendly and really are interested in all these gels or what's that, vitamin A, R, I think it's just an R. It's like retinol. There we go. And that is good going for those folks. I've actually tried retinol. I heard so many amazing things about it. There are a lot of clinical trials apparently that indicate how well it works for people. Here's the thing: I wasn't able to stay consistent with it. Any of these protocols that people use for reduce the signs of aging, all of that takes work, and you have to be sufficiently motivated to spend that time, energy, and money. And things like retinol are kind of expensive, and it just wasn't worth it to me, which is kind of interesting. I was more interested in building character, always interested in having a rich life and developing more meaning and interesting activities than I was necessarily in preserving the outward version of myself. And you know what? Here's the thing: I was blessed with good genes. It's true, and I've also sort of watched my health. I've been fairly conscientious compared to many, and so that's also been helpful in comparison with others. On the absolute scale, I don't know, but but here it's just a testament. It's not necessarily my virtues. It's just a testament to how challenging the external world is. It's really challenging for a lot of folks. I'm thinking about namely something like the obesity epidemic. Wow, that's a really serious challenge. We've got to really difficult and challenging food environment for a lot of people. And it is absolutely difficult. We're trying to, there's like this headwind. If our goal is to maintain our weight and our healthy lifestyles, there's a huge headwind that's preventing us from getting there. There's all the marketing and all the amazing tasting food and its availability and its ease and even social pressure. And, there's all kinds of things. Our own self will, our own self discipline, it's limited, right? And there are just so many factors are different and our environment is just really challenging out there. And, it's no surprise that like heart disease and diabetes or cancer are like the killers they are. Um, it's just because our environment is just so challenging. And even when it comes to something like maintaining like an exercise routine, that's tough to do. People don't have a lot of time. I think there's a lot of people who struggle with time pressure. And because I don't know how one could exist in our culture without constantly thinking about time and sort of maneuvering your way around time requirements and deadlines and suspenses. And it's, I hand it to anyone who's able to maintain excellent mental health and excellent physical health. It is really a challenge. And, kudos to you if you can do it. I really am. Good for you. I think those people sort of stand out in a crowd. It's kind of easy to tell. Like, oh, look at that person. They're doing great. They're definitely, getting the blue ribbon, in life, right? Their grades, their scorecard is high, right? They're getting A's. They're getting 90%. Yeah, because it's not easy for a lot of folks. Yeah, isn't that great? So, but I have a lot of sympathy, empathy for those who struggle. Which is why I'm glad I'm not a psychotherapist or a nurse or anything like that. A lot of people think about like something like empathy fatigue or whatever. And the thing is, for me, I really sort of care about others generally. And I think I would struggle in a helping profession because I would want to help a lot of people. And I think I would just sort of drown in the helpfulness of it all. And I'd kind of lose myself helping others out. So kudos to those folks, those doctors and nurses who work so hard, all those police officers and firefighters who are going about their day helping out the world, social workers in particular, really tackling the hard cases. Good for them. It's not easy to do. It sort of reminds me of this whole, you can lead people to water, but you can't make them drink. And there's so much variation in human personality and our experiences. I mean, it's really hard. I can only imagine how tough it is to sort of help a person navigate the problems that they might have in life. It's because here's the thing. A lot of life problems just are not manageable. They're just not, We talk about like the in-between generation, like Gen X right now is in between the boomers, say, and the millennials, or their children like Gen Z. And so, there's kind of in the middle. They're supporting both the very young and the very old people my age, right? Gen X folks now. And they're also supporting themselves. And so, I mean, just that fact itself, along with society and its focus on independence, that means there's just, if it takes a village to raise a child, if it's just you and your spouse, that's going to be a challenge, right? It's people and families are so dispersed; it's hard to find support. So, it's not an easy thing to be alive in the world today. So I handed it out to everybody. I give everyone a kudos on the planet, this third rock from the sun, for, if they're alive, they're doing pretty good. I mean, if they're alive, breathing and kicking, they must be doing pretty good, because, man, because if you're not doing pretty good, let me tell you, you're not going to be alive, breathing and kicking for very long. For very long. Yeah. You know, it goes down to like maybe even like Darwinian fitness. You know, there are a lot of uh, sort of parts and pieces to our ecological niche. There's the psychological piece, and then there's the physical piece, and there are challenges, both psychological and physical, that happen around us. We've got limitations as human beings. We're quite limited. We have only so much energy, only so much time, only so much money. Our brain power is only so great. Can only verify so many facts. Otherwise, for the rest, we just have to sort of rely on what everybody else is thinking. We have to rely on, so there is stress, partly because we've got ambiguity. It's not together clear what meanings or purpose is available to people. And this ambiguity, sometimes we've got lack of factual knowledge because we've got to act rapidly. It'd be great. I mean, I would love if I could sort of do fact checking on every single cognitive thought that enters my mind. I just can't. I can't. I can't fact check everything. And in fact, that's part of the reason why we live in such challenging times, especially when it comes to AI. First of all, the cultural landscape is changing so rapidly, but AI is definitely going to make it difficult for us to get a handle on what's real and what's not. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's great that I think it'll quite help quite a lot of people, but I think it's easier to sort of go astray, especially now with incredible photographs, incredible videos, that is incredible pictures, incredible videos that are created by AI. It's like they're pretty deceptive. You might think that something is real and it may not be real. And there's no way that you can verify that information unless you get corroboration. And it's not easy. You gotta to get corroboration. Whew, in this environment, it's really tough. It's really tough. And from sources that matter to you and that are, focused on facts, it's not always the easiest thing to do. So kudos to anyone who could survive and thrive in today's day and age. I am hopeful about the future. I'm actually quite optimistic. I think we'll be able to cut through a lot of ambiguity, and I'm glad for that. I have a feeling that people are going to be empowered, and people are going to be able to do the kind of work, either creative work or leading work, that they want to do. I do think that things are getting better, but we are running up against some serious challenges like climate change and just political uncertainty. And, it's not going to be an easy hill to climb, but I think we are climbing it, and I'm glad for that. I'm looking forward to innovations that are going to change the face of the planet and our culture, like fusion energy. That to me is something that is pretty amazing. I'm looking forward to being developed. They tell me it's going to take 30 to 50 years for us to develop that technology, and I hope we can do it sooner than that, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Aren't we lucky to be living today? I mean, I think we are fortunate to live in interesting times, and there is no time that's more interesting than the time we're living in right now. I really do think that. I really do think we are living in the most interesting time ever. Why do I think that? Well, first of all, we have just boundless, unlimited knowledge from almost every source. and we could learn or know anything, and that's part of what makes life as rich as it is. The fact that we have access to just this wide range of information. We just didn't have it before on any subject we want. So that's part of what makes this life amazing. Also, the singularity, the technological singularity of the convergence of all the technologies coming together. I mean, it's just an amazing time to be alive, where there is literally inventions that are mind blowing that occur every week. I mean, when could you say something like that? Like in the past, there was Thomas Edison, right? And he in his laboratory came up with some amazing things, adapted technologies and things like this, like a phonograph, and telephone, and I mean the list goes on. Now, I don't imagine that Thomas Edison was able to come up with these amazing inventions once a week. But today, I can almost rely on week by week having stuff that just blows my mind showing up on the internet. Like a new kind of humanoid robot. I don't know what it could be. Maybe it's Neuralink connections between microchips in brain and that communication. I mean, there's so many discoveries that are happening, just blowing my mind every single day. Artificial intelligence that can program software, video games, and things like that from one single prompt. I mean, all that kind of stuff just blows my mind. Video production, sound and audio production, like music production. All it takes is nowadays to get something very, very reasonable, very listen toable. Is just a minute or two you have to wait, and the music shows up. And or poetry, for example. I've just been stunned by some of the poetry that's coming out of these large language models. That's definitely an amazing thing. I don't know. So many mind-blowing events. So yeah, I'm thankful for it. Yeah. So it's kind of funny. I have mentioned, like, it's not easy to determine whether things that happened in the past were better, like that we're better off than we were back then. I don't know. For human beings, it's really easy for us to take things for granted. We take things for granted, like clean water that comes out of the tap from our sink. Back 35,000 BC, people definitely did not have clean water coming out of their tap. Oh yeah, and we're so much better. Even soap, right? The availability of soap, and different kinds of soap at that. We've got shampoo, we've got soap for our hands, we've got different kind of soap for our dishes, we got different kind of soap for our laundry. I mean, just soap. In the past, getting soap was not easy. First of all, if you had cattle, you'd have to slaughter the cattle and then remove the fat, and then boil the fat in vats of oil, in heated vats over fire, and then to sort of, I don't know, remove the impurities, and then you'd end up with tallow, and then and then with the tallow, I'm not sure exactly what the process is, but once you've got that tallow, you can mix that with, I don't know, fireplace ashes or something like that. And then you end up with soap, right? After this incredibly long process where you were literally sweating it out, eventually you get to soap. And here's the soap. The soap that you have now, I don't know, it's like ash and tallow combined. First of all, it might not smell very good. It may not even have like antibacterial properties. I don't know how good that kind of soap is. I don't think I've ever kind of used a tallow-based soap, because all my soaps a lot of them pretty much that I've used throughout my lifetime have been chemical detergents that come out of industrial laboratories and industrial factories. You know, and these detergents just are extremely good at what they do. A lot of the different soaps we have, and they're also very fragrant and enjoyable to use, and they don't over dry, and they have moisturizers in them, and they have like wonderful colors to look at. Sometimes, they're works of art, really, the soaps that we have today. I just pulled soap out of the air. The soap that people had, like I said, 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, it was hard to come by. And in fact, let me tell you, I'm a lover of soap. I love soap. Soap is so great. I use soap many times a day. I cover my whole body in soap when I take a shower, and I wash my hands very regularly. Yeah, our interaction with soap is very regular, and it has a very strong quality of life element to it. When I'm working at my desk, one common thing I might do regularly is I'll spray it with some soap and wipe down the surface, because I don't care for the sticky surfaces that develop when I put my elbows on the table or whatever, or say I'd eaten momentarily or drunk something momentarily, or I just have some gunk on my hands or whatever. I really appreciate having soap available so I can clean up the area, and I can do it very quickly and get on with my work. 2,000 years ago, it was not as easy. Where do you find the tallow? And what form is the soap in? Today we've got like spray soap, and we've got liquid soap, and we've got so many kinds of soap, bar soap. And we have soaps that are tailored for their use. Back then, a couple thousand years ago, I don't know if you may not be able to use some of the soaps you run across. You might have soap that smells bad. You might have soap that makes you feel more dirty after you used it than before. That sounds pretty reasonable, in fact. So yeah. Anyway, I'm just reflecting now about how soap generally improves the quality of life. And we take it for granted. We take soap for granted. We take running water for granted. We take heat. Outdoors, I don't know what the temperature is right now, but I'm sure that if I were outside, I would be reasonably uncomfortable in the clothes that I'm wearing now. It'd probably be a little bit too cold. And so I would not be very happy. But guess what? I'm living indoors. I'm living indoors in a place, a home that is basically doesn't have a draft, right? There are no drafts, there are no leaks, water leaks or air leaks or sunlight leaks or anything like that. It's sealed. I'm sealed in here, protected like a person in a cocoon. That sounds like a huge quality of life improvement there that a lot of people don't have, that people take for granted. It's kind of funny. In order to take, imagine for a moment, let's imagine for a moment that I've taken everything for granted. I might, in the moment, feel sad, dejected. I might feel self-judgmental, self-critical. For a lot of reasons, I might not like my life situation. This is just hypothetical. In the midst of modern civilization, in the midst of, living in a home, having a place to sleep, having soap, having enough food to eat, having heat, having electricity, having the internet, having AI, having any kind of entertainment I want in the moment, whether it's text or video you know, in order to sort of really feel dejected or sad or self-critical, in a way, I would have to, it sort of requires a little bit of unbalance because of how good we've got it in the modern world. I mean, if something were to really go wrong, I could call 911 and in a very short amount of time have a doctor see me and probably prescribe some kind of medication to help give me a boost and fix whatever it was that had sort of broken metabolically or physically in my body. That's just amazing. It's just amazing. I also have knowledge with news programs. I have knowledge about what's going on the other side of the planet. If I wanted, I could use the internet and find a newspaper from an obscure town on the other side of the planet and get to know in moments, in minutes, what's going on in that town or city or state or whatever. I mean, the reach we have with social media. Like, I could contact my friends, my parents. I could contact my family in moments, have a video conference with them, and feel, at least for a few moments, like I'm near them, even if I'm thousands of miles away. I mean, that is an amazing capability. We're all that powerful. And even beyond that, even beyond the modern conveniences and amazing circumstances of the modern world, the fact that, I mean, we even have like mouths and senses and hands and a brain that's functioning with all the millions of neurotransmitters. It is to sort of be in the miracle, sort of acknowledge the miracle as it is. I don't know. To some extent, you sort of have to lose your bearings to sort of be very upset. Now, I know things could go really wrong really fast, and for a lot of people, it's true. There's a lot of problem. There's a lot of harm in the world, a lot of pain in the world. But I don't know. There are just so many amazing miracles around us. Now, maybe let me talk for a moment about the distinction I just made, and it was sort of implicit. The distinction was, so if a person is living sort of at a level that's less than sustainable, let's say it's just it's you're sort of living a life that's not sustainable, that's maybe you're dying of cancer. Is there a way to at least salvage and live a meaningful life despite the, say, chronic pain or addiction or whatever problem that a person has, physical ailment? I mean, are there ways? Yeah, I would say there are. Well, first of all, things could always be worse. They could always be worse. Always be worse. Oh, yeah, you can't get out of your bed. You need help to sit up. Well, things could always be worse. There are people who, man, are quadriplegics. Maybe they've got locked in person syndrome or whatever. There are quite a few folks out there who are living on the edge and need a lot of support to go on living. I mean, it could always be worse. I mean, okay, say you lost a limb. Well, there are people who've lost 2 limbs. There are people who've lost 4. There are people who've lost limbs and much of their torso. There are people who've lost their hydrocephalic and they've lost half their brain, or they've lost most of their brain. You can always get worse. And I don't know. And even if things are going badly, there is an aspect of, there's a lot of people in pain, and for some, they can derive meaning out of it. Let's say, here's an example. let's say I sort of rescued a school bus load of children they were on their way to school. This is just hypothetical. But in the midst of doing that, I became severely disabled. Either, let's say, both mentally and physically, right? I can still say, even though I am significantly reduced and degraded in my quality of life, I can still say that what I did, that heroic act that I did, might have been worth it in the end, saving all those children from whatever disaster. I mean, so I could still feel a sense of self-worth and worthiness and like meaning as I move from moment to moment. I mean, that's still entirely possible despite all the physical problems and mental problems. So there's that aspect. I think there's another aspect too, and that is the ability to bear physical pain and challenge. For some, there's just no way around it. There is physical pain that's chronic, and there's just no way around it. They just have to bear it. There is a way to virtuously bear discomfort. There at least is a way. Um, one can bear it silently and heroically. There are ways to bear terrible discomfort and pain, and that people do all the time. There are a lot of folks who have chronic pain, and they are continuously bearing whatever pain they are. And in some respect, this bearing itself is a virtue. And there's just something about how human beings, I think there are different ways. I mean, I can imagine like a whole like constellation of different ways that people can bear discomfort. And as you bear more of it, quite often you'll probably learn how to bear that discomfort um, in ways that make you proud, whatever it is. And perhaps it's about being generous toward your children, and say not complaining about one thing or another. I don't know. I'm sure there are ways to bear virtuously, and it may be more. It could depend on people and their values. What is involved. I can imagine. I think you can bear virtuously. And there's something about being a human that involves bearing. I mean, like I was mentioning, living is not easy for anyone. And in some respects, all humans share the one common theme, and that is that we are all bearing discomfort all the time. There's the uncertainty of not knowing. There's the bearing of just regular old aches and pains. That's quite discomforting. But I think all human beings right now on the planet can be said to be bearing something or other. I mean, if they're in the midst of feeling good, that feeling good comes to an end, and we kind of have to bear it. Maybe we're bored for a little while or whatever. That's like the best case. But I can imagine a worst case scenario where, you can bear virtuously. Now, I think there's even more to it than that. There's the bearing. There's more to it than that that's possible in terms of if things are really not going well. There are elements of control. Let's say I am in hospice and I'm about to die, and in a couple weeks, there are ways that I can bear that discomfort, knowing of my certain death. I can bear that by, say, controlling like who will who I visit with. Um, there might be, um, maybe I might focus on certain thoughts that bring me comfort. That is an example of bearing something through your choice, right? Through your control. Like you're sometimes, even when things are not going well for you, you can act in ways that um, give you more control over the situation. Maybe you die with dignity. Maybe that is the idea of that makes you happy, or makes you happy, gives you some enjoyment in the midst of, say, lots of chronic pain. So there's bearing virtuously, and then there's having control over your behavior or actions or some aspect of the situation, and directing, confidently directing, um, your loss. Because one thing about life is that we all go through loss, and eventually we're going to lose it all. Everyone loses everything in the end. I mean, I don't know if there's a more truer statement than that. Sometimes I was thinking the other day that half your life you spend acquiring things and growing, and the other half you spend losing things. Now that's an idealization. It's not entirely correct, and it's different for different people. But there's a point where we come into the world and we have nothing, and then we grow and acquire, and then eventually we leave the world with nothing. And so, I mean, I'm just the general arc of that story tells you that there is a time where there is an acquisition, and then a release. And toward that end of our life, we can either control it, certain aspects of it, bear virtuously those last few moments, hours, days, or weeks. There are ways to find contentment in the meaning. I think it was Viktor Frankl who said something along the lines of, the ultimate, no one can take away our choice, the choice of attitude as we maneuver through life. And yeah, I think that's entirely true. And so I think what that does is it provides a modicum of happiness, even in a situation that is completely dire. Yeah, I think it can provide some gladness, joy, and maybe that's some aspect of there's something you can be grateful for. You can be grateful that it's not any worse. there's a way that you can extract joy from every moment, even in those moments where there's total loss and death. I do think it's possible. In many respects, the human body is built to bear. We have our neurotransmitters, and there's just something about the nervous system which sort of is accustomed to bearing. I mean, I think about weightlifters. Weightlifters bear heavy weights, and they just get used to it, right? They get used to whatever weights they're bearing, and then until they bear more. Human beings, the biological system is a system where we just bear insult after insult, so long as it doesn't completely destroy us. That's just what our genes have, over the millennia, have evolved to do. It's to bear. And yeah, I think we can bear virtuously and in control, and we can bear knowing that it could be worse. And that and being grateful for the moment, whatever that moment is, because every moment that we're alive is a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. And I think we can be grateful for it, and no matter where we are, in which phase of life we're at. So anyway, I guess I just wanted to mention those things um, about how people get better in the world eventually. And it's happened to me too. Anyway, talk to you later. Have a wonderful evening. Bye bye.